You wake up one morning and think, is this it? Is the best part over? If you're over 50 and that thought has crossed your mind, you're not alone. There's a quiet existential crisis happening in the second half of life. It's not always depression, not always despair. Sometimes it's just flatness, a sense that the fire went out and you're not sure how to reignite it. Here's what most people don't realize. This crisis is actually philosophical, and two of history's greatest minds had radically different answers to it. Arthur Schopenhauer looked at life and said, it's suffering, accept it, minimize desire, withdraw. Friedrich Nietzsche looked at the same reality and said, create meaning, embrace struggle, become who you really are. Today, we're diving deep into Nietzsche's answer to finding purpose after 50 and overcoming the existential emptiness so many face. You'll discover concepts like Amor, Fati, loving your fate, and the will to live that still burns inside you, even if it feels buried. By the end, you'll have a philosophical framework and practical steps to reignite passion and reclaim life meaning over 60. If this resonates, hit that like button now. Let's begin. Before we get to Nietzsche's fire, we need to understand the ice. Arthur Schopenhauer, the 19th century German philosopher, had a dark view of existence. He believed life is fundamentally suffering. We're driven by blind will, endless desires that can never be satisfied. We want, we get, we want more. And when we're not wanting, we're bored. For Schopenhauer, aging makes this worse. The body declines, pleasures fade, losses accumulate. His prescription? Minimize desire. Seek detachment. Accept that life is pain and lower your expectations accordingly. It's a philosophy of resignation dressed in intellectual sophistication. Now, here's why this resonates with so many people over 50. You've lived long enough to see patterns. Relationships end. Careers plateau or disappear. Health issues emerge. The things you thought would bring lasting happiness didn't. Schopenhauer's pessimism starts to sound accurate, maybe even wise. For some, this philosophical resignation can slide into something darker, a struggle with overcoming depression that feels both existential and deeply personal. But here's what Schopenhauer got wrong, and what Nietzsche saw clearly. Accepting suffering as inevitable is one thing. Surrendering your will to live, your capacity for joy, your drive to create meaning, that's something else entirely. And that's where Nietzsche enters with a philosophy that couldn't be more different. Friedrich Nietzsche read Schopenhauer as a young man and initially admired him. But over time, he came to see Schopenhauer's philosophy as life-denying, even cowardly. Nietzsche asked, why accept resignation when you could choose affirmation? At the core of Nietzsche's thought is the concept of the will to power. Now, this gets misunderstood constantly. It's not about dominating others or accumulating power over people. It's about self-overcoming, the drive to grow, create, expand your capacities, become more than you currently are. It's the fundamental life force that pushes a seed to break through soil, that drives an artist to create, that makes you want to be better tomorrow than you are today. Schopenhauer said life is suffering, so withdraw. Nietzsche said life is struggle, so engage. Schopenhauer counseled minimizing desire. Nietzsche urged you to channel desire into creation. One philosophy leads to quiet defeat. The other leads to what Nietzsche called life affirmation, a wholehearted yes to existence, including its pain. Here's the crucial point for anyone over 50 feeling that existential flatness. Nietzsche believed the will to power never dies. It might be buried under disappointment, fatigue, or loss, but it's there. And the second half of life offers a unique opportunity to reconnect with it, not to prove anything to anyone else, but to become who you actually are. So why does the will to live seem to fade for so many people after 50? Nietzsche would say it's because we've been living according to values that weren't truly ours. Think about the values society hands you. Be productive. Climb the ladder. Look young. Accumulate wealth. Build the perfect family. These aren't inherently bad, but they're often external, imposed by culture, family expectations, or pure social conditioning. For decades, you chase them. And then, around 50, something shifts. Maybe you retire and realize your identity was wrapped up in your job title. Maybe your kids leave home and the role of parent that consumed you suddenly feels hollow. Maybe you look in the mirror and realize the value you placed on youth and appearance is crumbling. The scaffolding collapses, and underneath, there's a question. What do I actually value? What do I want my life to be about now? This emptiness, this void where purpose used to be, is often what makes overcoming depression in the second half of life so challenging. It's not just sadness, it's a crisis of meaning. This is where many people encounter what Nietzsche called nihilism, the sense that life has no inherent meaning. But here's Nietzsche's radical insight. Nihilism isn't the end. It's the beginning. When old values fall away, you have the freedom and the responsibility to create new ones. Not values handed down by society, but values chosen by you. The emptiness you feel after 50 isn't failure. It's an invitation to ask, what do I care about deeply enough to build a second half of life around? That's not resignation. That's philosophical liberation, and it requires courage. One of Nietzsche's most powerful concepts is Amor Fati, love of fate. It's Latin for love your fate, and Nietzsche meant it literally. Not just accept your fate, not just tolerate it, love it. Embrace everything that's happened to you, everything you are, including the parts you wish were different. For someone over 50, this is profound. You've accumulated a history, mistakes, regrets, losses, missed opportunities. Amor Fati says, don't wish it away. Don't spend your remaining years resenting what didn't happen or mourning who you aren't. Instead, love your entire story, because it's the only story that could have made you exactly who you are right now. This includes aging itself. Nietzsche would say, don't fight the reality of getting older with desperate denial. Love the wisdom that comes with age. Love the clarity. Love the freedom from needing to impress people. Even love the scars, because they're evidence you lived. Here's a practical exercise rooted in Amor Fati. Take a piece of paper. Write down 3 things about your life after 50 that you've been resenting. Maybe it's a health condition, a financial reality, or a relationship that ended. Now, for each one, write one way it shaped you, taught you, or freed you. This isn't toxic positivity. It's philosophical reframing. It's choosing to see your fate as something that happened for you to overcome, not to you as a victim. Amor Fati doesn't mean passivity. It means radical acceptance of what is, combined with fierce determination to create meaning from it. That's the difference between Schopenhauer's resignation and Nietzsche's affirmation. Nietzsche wrote, "Become who you are." It's one of his most famous lines, and people misunderstand it constantly. They think it means find your true self. But Nietzsche didn't believe in a fixed, true self waiting to be discovered. He meant, create who you are through your choices, your values, your actions. You become yourself by living intentionally. Here's why this matters desperately after 50. Many people feel it's too late. I'm who I am. I can't change now. That's Schopenhauer talking, the voice of resignation. Nietzsche would say the opposite. You have decades left. You finally have the self-knowledge, the freedom from social pressure, and the clarity about what matters to actually become who you want to be. Discovering life meaning over 60 isn't just possible. It's one of the great opportunities of human existence. The second half of life is where most people have the fewest obligations. Your kids are grown. Your career is established or finished. You've proven whatever you needed to prove to the world. Now the question becomes, what do you want to prove to yourself? What version of you do you want to become before you die? This isn't about grand reinvention necessarily. It's about alignment. Maybe you've always been curious about philosophy, but never had time. Now you do. Maybe you care about mentoring young people, but your job didn't allow it. Now I can. Maybe you want to write, paint, travel, build something, deepen relationships. Nietzsche would say, this is an indulgence. This is the will to power expressing itself through you. Becoming who you are after 50 means shedding the masks you wore for others and building a life around what genuinely energizes you. And yes, it's still possible. It's not only possible, it's urgent. Nietzsche had a thought experiment that's genuinely terrifying if you take it seriously. He called it the eternal return. Imagine a demon appeared to you and said, "You will live this exact life, with every moment, every pain, every joy, every choice, again and again for eternity. Nothing changes. You're locked in an infinite loop." How would you feel? Would you despair? Or would you say, yes, I'd live it again? Nietzsche believed this test reveals everything about how you're living right now. If the thought of eternal return fills you with dread, something's wrong. You're not living a life you love. You're enduring, not affirming. But if you could genuinely say yes to living your life over and over, you've achieved something rare. You're living in alignment with your deepest values. Now, here's how to use this as a practical framework after 50. Ask yourself, if I had to live the next 20 or 30 years on repeat forever, what would I need to change today? What relationships would I need to repair or release? What habits would I need to build or break? What experiences would I need to prioritize? This isn't about perfection. It's about direction. Nietzsche isn't asking you to love every moment. He's asking you to live in a way where the overall trajectory is something you'd willingly embrace eternally. That's a high bar, but it's also clarifying. Most people over 50 are living out of habit, not choice. The eternal return test forces choice. And here's the paradox. When you live as if you'd willingly repeat your life forever, you stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You become fiercely intentional. That's the will to live reigniting. That's Nietzsche's philosophy in action. Nietzsche distinguished between two types of nihilism. Passive nihilism is what Schopenhauer represents. Life has no meaning, so withdraw, minimize, resign. Active nihilism is what Nietzsche advocates. Life has no inherent meaning, so you're free to create your own. One leads to decline, the other leads to power. After 50, passive nihilism is a real danger. You see the randomness of life. You've lost people you love. You know your time is finite. The temptation is to say, "What's the point?" and coast. That's passive nihilism. It's seductive because it requires nothing from you. Active nihilism requires everything. It says, since there's no cosmic scoreboard, no pre-written script, I get to write my own values. I get to decide what my life means. Nietzsche called this revaluation of values, tearing down the old value system that no longer serves you and building a new one from scratch. Here's a practical exercise in active creation. Take 30 minutes with a journal. Write down every value you currently live by. Things like be productive, be nice, save money, stay healthy, keep the peace. Now ask, did I choose this value consciously, or did I inherit it? Does it still serve who I want to become, or is it a relic of who I used to be? Cross out any value that feels imposed or outdated. Then write 3 new values that reflect who you want to be in the second half of life. Maybe it's be authentic instead of be nice. Maybe it's create beauty instead of be productive. Maybe it's seek depth instead of keep the peace. These aren't better or worse. They're yours. That's active nihilism. You're not waiting for life to hand you meaning. You're forging it. And every choice you make from those values reignites the will to live because you're living on your terms. Let's bring this down to earth. You've absorbed Nietzsche's philosophy, will to power, Amor, Fati, becoming who you are, eternal return, active creation. Now what? How do you actually reignite passion and purpose after 50? First, start small with the will to power. Pick one area of your life where you've been stagnant and commit to growth. Not massive transformation, just movement. Maybe you take a class in something that fascinates you. Maybe you start a physical practice you've avoided. Maybe you reach out to someone and rebuild a connection. The will to power isn't about grand gestures. It's about directing your energy toward expansion, not contraction. Second, practice Amor Fati daily. Every morning, write one thing about your current reality, including aging, including limitations, that you choose to love instead of resent. This rewires your brain from victim to creator. You're not denying hardship. You're refusing to let hardship define you. Third, use the eternal return test weekly. Every Sunday, ask, if I had to repeat this week forever, what would I change? Then change one thing the following week. Over time, this compounds into a life you genuinely want to relive. That's alignment. That's purpose. Fourth, audit your values quarterly. Nietzsche believed we should constantly re-examine what we live for. Every 3 months, revisit those core values you wrote down. Are they still true? Are you living them? If not, adjust. You're not a static being. You're becoming. This ongoing process of examining and choosing your values is how you discover authentic life meaning over 60. Not by following a blueprint, but by creating your own. Here's how you know it's working. You'll stop asking, is the best part over? You'll start asking, what do I want to create next? That shift from passive to active, from nostalgia to anticipation, is the will to live reignited. It's Nietzsche's philosophy embodied in your daily choices. So here's where we are. Schopenhauer offers you resignation. Life is suffering. Minimize desire. Accept decline. Nietzsche offers you affirmation. Life is struggle. Create meaning. Become who you are. Both men looked at the same reality. Both were brilliant, but they reached opposite conclusions. The question for you, right now, in the second half of life, is simple. Which philosophy will you choose? Because make no mistake, this is a choice. You can drift into passive nihilism, or you can commit to active creation. You can resent your fate, or you can love it. You can let the fire go out, or you can reignite it. My challenge to you, pick one concept from today, Amor Fati, eternal return, will to power, value creation, and apply it starting now. Not next week. Today. Write it down. Act on it. See what shifts. If this brought clarity, click that like button. If you want more philosophy that challenges you to live fully, subscribe and turn on notifications. And drop a comment. Tell me, Schopenhauer or Nietzsche, which philosophy speaks to where you are right now? See you tomorrow.